I don't know who needs to hear this, but apparently the guy from Review Tech USA needs to hear this. Richard, your terrible take on Twitter was a terrible take. If you don't know, Richard from Review Tech USA wrote that basically he was complaining about people feeling nostalgic for the NES and the SNES by saying that because they were born after the fact that those consoles were relevant, that they have no right to claim nostalgia for those consoles. Basically, that's what he said, and I think that's a lot of nonsense, because nostalgia doesn't come from liking a thing that was relevant when you grew up. Nostalgia comes from a thing that you actually experienced growing up, and it could be absolutely anything. It can be a video game, it can be a book, it can be a TV show, it can be a movie, it can be a comic book, it could be anything. It could be a trading card, or whatever, okay? So, in that aspect, let me give you an example of how you're completely wrong and not very well thought out in your tweet. I was born in 1989, and I grew up throughout the 90s. And I experienced the 2600 when I was 7 years old or thereabouts for the first time. And I loved it. So much so that my auntie actually gave it to me when I was 11 or 12 years old, and I played a lot of it. But I also had a Sega Mega Drive, and I also had a PlayStation 1 when that console was handed down to me. I even had a PS2 when that console was handed down to me. But I'm nostalgic for the 2600 because that was my childhood, because I experienced that. I'm nostalgic for it. That's how nostalgia works. It's not based on what is relevant, it's based on what you experienced. With your logic, I can't be nostalgic for Thundercats because it came out before I was born. It never syndicated broadcast throughout the 90s, I don't think. Not that I know of. But I can't be nostalgic for that, despite the fact I grew up watching it. Because I had tapes, I had video cassettes. With your logic, absolutely nobody in this generation can be nostalgic for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs by Disney. Because none of us were born when that came out. 1938, 37, 36. Nobody was born. At least your fan base wasn't born around that time. So we cannot be nostalgic for the likes of Bambi, for the likes of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, for the likes of Fantasia. Well, I don't know about Fantasia, but we can't be nostalgic for those things because we weren't born around those times. So our nostalgia for those are completely fake or clouded or misrepresented or whatever the fuck it is you're trying to promote here. I don't know if you were high, I don't know if you were drunk, I don't even know if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, but I will say that I respected you as a YouTuber for quite a while. I really enjoyed your content, but that was a really ill thought out take, and this is a completely unscripted video at 8 o'clock in the morning as I'm about to make coffee, as I'm about to leave for work, but I couldn't let that tickle my brain, and because I was like, I have to vent this because people you can't gatekeep nostalgia like that. You cannot do that. That is so silly. That's so stupid. Like, I've got things that I'm nostalgic for here in the forms of TV shows, in the forms of movies. Tom and Jerry. I'm nostalgic for Tom and Jerry, and that is a 50s or 60s cartoon show, but I'm nostalgic for it because I watched it. It was broadcast on Cartoon Network and Boomerang, and I watched it. I am nostalgic for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, not the movies, the TV shows. I'm nostalgic for them because I watched them growing up, despite the fact they were released in 1986 or whenever it was. But I watched them. Your take on gatekeeping nostalgia is completely stupid and ill thought out, and you really need to go back and rethink what you wrote, but you probably won't because you have tweeted lots of times since, and you seem to be dying on that hill. So you can have that opinion and you're perfectly entitled to it, but we are also perfectly entitled to come in here and say, this is why you're inaccurate and your take on nostalgia. That's all I'm going to say about this. If you watched it, then thanks very much, I suppose. But if you want to see more, I've got plenty of better content on here. Thanks again. This has been Dave talking to you on GB Gaming, where video games come first, and I will see you later. Cheerio.